Do something with the insight, with the provocation, with the interest of actually wanting to change yourself in some way so that you create a greater experience of life, that there is love in life and that you can have a committed relationship and it can be different from your parents. And now you know what you're not going to be, right? So I think all of that is valuable. I think every experience that we have in our life that programs us to be a certain way, sooner or later, if we're interested in arriving at the goals and dreams that we want, we have to leave that behind. Because sooner or later, a part of us must die, and sooner or later we have to leave that. So, I think that's evolution. Consciousness is awareness, and awareness is paying attention and noticing. So I think the first step is to become conscious that we're a certain way. And sometimes it lands as an insight or a download or a life experience that just kind of goes, you go, whoa, like, so I behaved this way or I did this thing. So I think when you don't have that, you don't have a conscience. And you can just keep staying in that world. But sooner or later, you have to become aware. What we know is that the more you practice being present, the better you get at it. And so how do you do that? If you sit in a meditation, right? And so there's a mode in the brain called the default mode, and it's just always busy. It's consuming enormous amounts of energy in the brain, and it's always trying to predict the future based on what it knows in the past. It's a kind of an anticipation machine. It's always trying to fill in a known in reality so we feel safe. So the default mode system in the brain, when you close your eyes in a meditation, is going to immediately go into overdrive. It's going to say, oh, my back hurts a little bit, I'm kind of thirsty, how long is this going to go? I really don't want to do this, I don't like the music, this might be too long, oh, I'm starting to get a little frustrated, I want to lay down, all of this stuff comes up. And then people have the belief and they say, I can't meditate. That's their conclusion from the experience. That's their, I'm not a good meditator, that's their affirmation, that's their belief, right? From that experience. But if you say to a person, listen, that's normal, but every time you catch yourself going unconscious and become conscious, that's a victory. And as tedious as it may be in the beginning, the more you catch yourself going unconscious and becoming conscious, the more conscious you become in your life. And all of a sudden, you begin to pay attention to things that you weren't paying attention to before. So in the work that we do, we say that being in the present moment, truly in the present moment, is being comfortable in the unknown, right? The present moment is the unknown because there is the familiar past that we feel emotionally, and we have the predictable future, which are both the knowns. Being in the present moment is being the unknown, and that goes against thousands of years of programming because our biology is programmed that if we are truly in the unknown, we should be in survival. Because if you're in survival and you're in the fight or flight system, the unknown is a threat, it's a danger. So always try to predict the future based on the past and you'll have better chances of survival. Predict the worst case scenario. Be ready for that. Anything less than happens, you have better chance of surviving. So then to rest in the unknown goes against a lot of our biology. And we discovered that when a person keeps doing it over and over again, the body gets agitated, it gets frustrated, it gets impatient. Instead of the person saying, I quit, give them something to do and they can lower the volume to the emotion and settle the animal down, like training an animal, settling the body back down into the present moment. We teach people how to do that, and that's the victory.
Giving them something to do.
Yeah, they have something to do when that comes up. And if they catch their mind going from a person to another object, to their cell phone, to their computer, to a place they need to be, and at a time, and they catch themselves with their brain firing in modulated compartments. If they keep catching themselves doing that, if they keep doing that and they catch the circuit when it's firing and they settle it down, in time, sooner or later, they're going to stop firing those circuits in the brain. And their brain waves begin to change from an agitated, aroused state into a more coherent and slower brainwave state. So when they do this enough times, the brain begins to synchronize. The brain begins to fire in greater levels of wholeness or greater levels of order. So when that occurs, then the nervous system gets very regulated, gets very orderly. The autonomic nervous system moves into a state of regulation. Dysregulation of the autonomic nervous system is called stress, right? So to answer your question, when people do this really well, in just a few days, they'll get really good at it. The side effect of that is they get very relaxed in their heart. It's relaxed in the heart, and it's awake in the brain. And the more relaxed you get in your heart, we've discovered, really relaxing into your heart, the more the heart informs the brain to get creative. And so now the person has this kind of synchronization that's taking place between their heart and their brain as well. And they can rest in the present moment. The way you do that is you define what it really means to change. And to change is to be greater than the conditions in your environment, to be able to think, act, and feel differently in your same environment. That's what change is. To change is to be greater than your body, to be greater than its drives, in the meditation I'm speaking specifically, greater than its emotional responses, its memories, its emotional reactions, greater than its habits. The habit is when you've done something so many times, the body knows how to do it better than the conscious mind. So if you're sitting in a meditation, your body wants to get up and wants to get going, and got people to see, things to do. That's kind of like automatic, right? And people get up and they say, I can't meditate. But if you tell them that when you notice that, you bring your body back into the present moment, you settle it down, and tell it it's no longer the mind, that you're the mind. You're training the animal. Sooner or later, the body literally responds to a new mind. And there's literally a liberation of energy. The body begins to liberate energy. And if the person's not thinking about time, if you're not thinking about where you need to be, where you need to go, where you were yesterday, where you're sitting, where you live, if you're not thinking about any place, you can go from somewhere to nowhere. And if you're not thinking about the predictable future or the familiar past, you can go from sometime to no time. And we discovered when a person becomes nobody, no one, no thing, nowhere, and no time, they literally become pure consciousness. And opening our awareness, I know this is kind of difficult to explain because we're materialists, opening our awareness to nothing and sensing space tends to cause us to move more into the eternal present moment. And there's a change that takes place in the brain. So we teach that. You'll become so conscious of those unconscious habits that more than likely you won't want to do them again. And that's what, for the most part, change is about. So I think people wait for crisis. They wait for disease. They wait for a betrayal, something to go wrong in their life. And that's when they go, okay, I'm ready to change. My message is, why wait, dude? Like, why wait for that? We can learn and change in a state of pain and suffering. We can learn and change in a state of joy and inspiration. So then you get a collective group of people together that really may have all those bad habits. They may even have bad habits that they don't even know they have. And then all of a sudden they become aware that they've been blaming and complaining and making excuses and feeling sorry for themselves and procrastinating. And they start to reason, if my personality creates my personal reality, if I'm going to create a new personal reality, I got to change my personality. Because this guy, that's this, isn't the guy that wants to be happy. This is the guy who's committed to being unhappy. Okay, let's break it down. Let's get down the fundamentals. And now we give them a roadmap of their thoughts, behaviors, and emotions that they have lived by. You could say that step 2 is becoming conscious of your unconscious self, and then becoming conscious of a new self, reinventing a new self. And so the person who's feeling really bad about themselves because they're not doing anything to change, it's just because when you're not changing, you're still choosing. But what you're choosing is something that makes you feel familiar and comfortable. Because the moment you decide to change, truly get serious about change, the moment you decide to to make a different choice and do something differently, you are going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to be immediate. And that's the moment you go from the known into the unknown. Now, if the body has been emotionally conditioned to be the mind, like we talked about earlier, the servant is the master. And so the person who steps out into the unknown and it feels uncomfortable, what is the body going to say? Get back to suffering. Get back to feeling bad. Get back to feeling guilty. At least that's familiar, that's known. So tell a person there's going to be a biological death of the old self. Neurologically, chemically, hormonally, genetically, the old self's going to die. Just know that that's going to happen. But instead of white-knuckling it across the river of change, we're going to give you something to do, because that unknown place is the perfect place to create in. So let's get you into the unknown, but let's get you there where you're relaxed and awake. You're not escaping. And if you do that really well, you'll be in a creative state, so you actually will be out of survival, and you'll be able to create, because you could only be in survival or creation. It can't be in both. So let's get your body physiologically back in the balance. Let's get it there. Now, who do you want to be? What do you want to believe? Let's review that. What's a belief? A thought you keep thinking over and over in your brain. Keep remembering to think this way in your meditation. How am I going to be with my ex or my boss? Let me close my eyes and think about what greatness looks like, what forgiveness would do, what love would do. Let me close my eyes and mentally rehearse how I'm going to be in that circumstance. I'm going to keep remembering to do these things so I don't forget. Keep doing it over and over again. You start installing the hardware. Repeat it enough times, it gets like a software program. You start behaving that way automatically. And then, my goodness, is it possible to teach our body emotionally how we do want to feel before it happens? In other words, don't wait for your wealth to feel abundant, or your success to feel empowered, or your healing to feel wholeness. That's waiting for something in your outer world to change, to take away the emptiness or lack that you're feeling in your inner world. Teach your body emotionally what it feels like ahead of the actual experience. And the moment you start feeling abundant, you're generating wealth. The moment you can embody empowerment, you're stepping towards your success. The moment you feel grateful and whole, the healing begins, right? So now you're starting to cause an effect in your life. So have the person keep remembering to feel that way and have them practice. Sooner or later, they'll start feeling that way more. And the more they feel that way, the more they'll believe in their future. And some people get so good at doing it that they walk around feeling that emotion, they feel like their future has already happened. And when you feel like the future has already happened, you stop looking for it. And that's when the magic starts to take place in people's lives. The synchronicities, the coincidences, the opportunities, they start coming to them in their life. And that's the reflection of their own personal change. Sometimes being in such severe lack and desperation, creates a state where you can't hear anything because no new information can enter the nervous system that is not equal to the emotion the person is experiencing. Just as a broad understanding, this is why we don't do questions at our events, because you can give the person the answer to the question that they're asking you, and they will not hear you. They will not hear you. In fact, they will argue against you. But if you get that person out of that emotional state, and the only person that's going to do that is them, by the way, get that person out of their emotional state, they can hear that information. So sometimes we're programmed into such lack, we're programmed, right, to wait for something out there to change, to take away this emptiness or lack. When this happens, I'll feel this, and so when things are good in our life, we feel good. And when things aren't so good in our life, we feel bad. So we're kind of victimized to the circumstances in our life. Our outer world is controlling our inner world of thoughts and feelings. So if a person has been programmed into saying, why haven't I healed? Or why hasn't this happened in my life? Because the person who's saying, why haven't I healed, is the old self. The new self would never say that, right? The new self is too busy overcoming and becoming, right? So I think people meet information at their own level.